Welcome to Literary Libations with Librarians. It's August, and we are back with some new titles that we've been reading and are excited to share. As we talk about our titles, if you're interested in any of them and you'd like to get your hands on them, there are several ways to go about doing that. The first and probably the easiest is to simply call your local branch of the Monroe County Library System and speak to the staff there, and they'll be more than happy to assist you. If you'd like to do it on your own and it is for a physical version, a hardcover or a paperback, you can go onto our online catalog, and that web address is on your screen now. Some of the titles you'll see will be listed as available in Libby or Hoopla, and those are our platforms that provide digital versions, ebooks or audiobooks. And so you can go to those on your device, go to your store if you haven't downloaded the apps yet and download them. And a little special note about Hoopla is that if a title is available on Hoopla and it has a lightning bolt next to it, and almost all the titles there do, it means that there is not a wait for that title. You can download it immediately, and it means that lots of people can have the same title downloaded at the same time. So that's a little bonus with Hoopla. I am Jennifer Granuski, and I am the Dundee Area Supervisor here at the Monroe County Library System. And to kick us off, we always start with a fun question. And August is National Crayon Collection Month. So those of you out there with crayon collections, you can be excited about this, even if it's just, all your kids' crayons that are scattered about and now stored in like little Rubbermaid totes because the actual boxes fell apart. I've definitely got some containers like that. So our question is, what is your favorite color crayon? And over the years, Crayola has actually changed some of the colors that they have available. In 1990, the very first time that they ever retired colors, they retired 8 colors to the Crayola Hall of Fame, which is awesome because who knew there was a Crayola Hall of Fame? So maize, lemon yellow, blue gray, raw umber, green blue, orange red, and orange yellow, and violet blue were retired. We said goodbye to them in 1990, and I don't even want to think about how long ago that was because I started thinking of the years and I was like, because to me, the 90s seemed like that was just around the corner. 8 new colors were added: vivid tangerine, jungle green, cerulean, fuchsia, dandelion, teal blue, royal purple, and wild strawberry. So those were added in 1990. In 2003, it was the centennial celebration for Crayola, and they retired more colors. And surprisingly, one of the colors that they retired was one of the new colors they added in 1990. So it only lasted for 3 years. So poor teal blue had, its 13 years on the Crayola colors, and then it was gone. They also retired Blizzard Blue, Magic Mint, and Mulberry. And they added 4 new colors: Inchworm, which I did not look up to see what color Inchworm was, but I'm picturing it as a sort of pink, Mango Tango, Wild Blue Yonder, and Jazzberry Jam. So there's a little history. In 2000, Crayola did a color census. Yes, a color census. And the most popular color, their top 10 colors, but number 1 was blue, just plain straightforward blue. And in their top 10, 6 other shades of blue made it into the top 10 as well. So of their top 10, 7 of the colors were shades of blue. So cerulean, midnight blue, aquamarine, periwinkle, denim, and blizzard blue. And the other colors that were included were purple heart, Caribbean green, and I had to look this one up, cerise. I did not know what that was, and it is gorgeous. It's like a deep pinkish red. It's very pretty. You can Google it, and then you can all be like, I like cerise. So I did not choose that as my favorite color. I chose navy blue. I'm a blue person as well. I love pink, and if you put glitter in a crayon, I'm definitely going to reach for it. But for a color that I can live with day to day and that I know I wear a lot, I like navy blue. So So there's my favorite color and some color facts for everybody. With us this week is Mandy Draganik, who is one of our catalogers. So she makes sure that when you go into that catalog, you can find what you're looking for. And Mandy, what is your favorite color?
I am always drawn to purples. And Crayola has had a lot of different purples throughout there. But I typically am drawn to, only because of the name, not the actual shade of purple, Purple Mountains Majesty. I just always loved that one, and it's probably my first pick. So
Nice. And also, I have to comment, Mandy has that amazing wall of color behind her because she makes amazing creations with her yarn. And if you ever get the chance, I don't know, sometime, I don't know where you'd see them, but, maybe Mandy does craft fairs or something, but she makes amazing things. I have one of her blankets that I won at a library raffle. So there's my Mandy story. Also with us is Jessica Otto, who is our head of collections. And what is your favorite color, Jessica?
Well, to be honest, at this stage in my life, my favorite crayon color is whichever color is easiest to wipe off the walls, since both of my kiddos are really into using the wall as canvas for crayon art. There's a lot of Mickey Mouses drawn all over our walls. But really, if I had to pick a single color, though, I would go with Midnight Blue, which I think is only available in Crayola's big 96 pack of crayons. And that's because it is the closest shade to the blue used by the University of Michigan Athletics. I'm a big fan of U of M, especially football. So that's why I like that one. It's the closest there. So yeah, Midnight Blue.
Nice. Purple, navy blue, midnight blue. Excellent. So now we're going to go ahead and share what we've been reading. And I'm going to ask Mandy to kick us off.
So I suppose that either, I don't know, just as a result of pandemic, post-pandemic life, or maybe just the stage of life I'm in. Some people might call it middle-aged, but I'm not going to say that. I've really been trying to balance my work time and my lifetime better and more efficiently. So the first book I want to talk about is Workday Warrior by Ian Gomez. It's kind of on the businessy side of things, but she has some incredibly practical tips about how to choose the best priorities, and then how to go about fulfilling and really just concentrating on those priorities in your life. She talks about choosing 3 core things, and then she talks about ways to filter out distractions and just interruptions that some really aren't necessary. She says in her book that people spend approximately 900 hours a year on social media. And that's so much time. And it's just really easy for us to get distracted by that and think, oh, I got to just check this real quick. I just want to check this Instagram real fast. And then the next thing you know, 10, 20, 40 minutes have gone by, and, there it goes. There goes your time. So she talks about just, setting aside a specific time of day to do that. So there's those silly distractions, and then there's distractions that are important, like you're answering your emails at work. She talks about you don't have to have your email up all the time and check it instantly, but you can. I know, right? I'm like, but I need to answer them right away. But set aside a block of time, and this is when I'm going to read emails and answer emails, and a couple times a day, 3 times a day if you need to, but keep that as a separate chunk of time so it's not constantly interrupting all of your other things. So she just got some really great practical tips. Some of them I think you might love, Jennifer. She makes a whole action plan map for your day. Here's what I'm going to do in all these blocks of time. And that's probably not my style, but I really do appreciate all of her other tips. So just a really practical way to recognize the amount of time you have in a day and then use it efficiently and to your best ability, really, and still leave time for fun and family and the really important things.
Absolutely.
And so that leads right into my other title, because while I've realized that I fill my day with too many things, I've also realized that I don't necessarily enjoy the time that I have for the fun things as much as I could or should. So one of the things I started doing, I've tried it before in my life and I failed miserably. But you know what they say, try again and again and again and again. So I just very recently started another sourdough starter. And to me, it almost seems counterintuitive because I need more time, right, in my life, and I need more time in my day. So why don't I just buy a loaf of bread, because that's fast and easy. But I enjoy the baking and I enjoy the process. And so if I can really take the time to enjoy the thing, then it makes that thing more worthwhile. So my next title is Super Sourdough by James Morton, and he has a ton of tips on starting your sourdough starters and a ton of troubleshooting tips, like how come my bread's so dense? How come my sourdough isn't bubbly? How come? All of these things. And it's got some really great pictures. I've got, I don't know if you can see this, but here's some delicious looking ciabatta bread.
Ooh.
He's got some great, like, step-by-steps on folding. Oh, it's kind of there. On folding your dough, kneading your dough, and just what happens if I use this flour, and what happens if I use that flour, and what happens if it's too hot or too cold, or all the things that really do affect your baking and your bread. But again, it's really more about just my journey and really enjoying the process, enjoying the journey, and not focusing so much on the end result.
Mhm.
So
Slowing down. My mom has taught Tony, we've not attempted sourdough, but she's taught him the basic white bread recipe. And I did not realize how many things could affect how the bread turns out at the end.
yeah,
Because he was working with it, and like one time it would be like amazing, and the next time he's like, I did the same thing and it would turn out differently. And we start checking on Google, and I'm like, oh my, I have no idea. I don't know. There's so many things that can affect bread and how it turns out. So we just had my mom come back over and do it with him again and tried some different things. And it's a matter of like being in that moment and recognizing what's happening with the dough as you're working with it.
Yes. And it's very tactile. It's very sensory filled, and it's like a science experiment every single day. You have to bubble up and go down and bubble up and go down. It's just so much fun. So
excellent. Thank you, Mandy. And Jessica is going to share with us what she's been reading and enjoying.
Both of the titles that I'm sharing today are actually older publications that were recently given new life. So earlier this year, Blackstone Publishing made an exclusive deal with Crichton Sun, which is the company that owns the rights to all the works of the late author Michael Crichton, and his widow is Sherry, is actually the president. So they got the rights to acquire the print, ebook, and audiobook rights to 8 of Crichton's novels that were originally written under a pseudonym of John Lang back in the late 60s through the early 70s, and while he was still in medical school. So there's 8 of these novels. They're not a series. They're all, each book is not connected to the other. It's all its own unique characters and plot, but they are releasing all 8 of these. As of now, they have released 3 of the novels, and the remaining 5 will be published between now and December 5th of this year. So my first title today, Binary, is the first book published as part of this deal. It was published back on June 6th. So as the cover implies, the plot comes at you like a full-speed freight train. It is August of 1972, and 7 men, all with connections to organized crime, are flying into Salt Lake City after they received an anonymous telephone call promising them $1,000. I'm sure that was a lot more in 1972, to perform an unspecified task. Someone has hacked into the Department of Defense's top secret network to find the transportation schedule of an armored train carrying a shipment of deadly ZV nerve gas, a binary agent. The 7 men are part of a plan to steal the nerve gas from the train and unleash mass destruction on 1 million people, including the US president. The men steal 2 500-pound canisters from the train, which are then promptly picked up by helicopters and flown to parts unknown. Enter State Department intelligence agent John Graves, who has been brought in to investigate the data breach that allowed the theft of the nerve gas. For the last few months, Graves has been monitoring and doing surveillance on a wealthy political radical named John Wright, who is not pleased with the US foreign policy at that moment, and he feels that he is the only one, of course, that can make it all right. So now it seems that there may be a connection between Wright and the stolen nerve gas, but it's up to Graves to prove it. Over the next few days, Wright and Graves play a high-stakes game of cat and mouse that all leads to an explosive showdown in downtown San Diego. So I'm a big fan of Crichton. I have been for a while. One of my favorite things about Crichton's work is that he has this wonderful ability to explain complex and like highly technical scientific concepts in a way that I can understand them, which I like. And so that was definitely true of this book as it relates to this concept of binary agents and their use as chemical weapons. I also really enjoyed the cybersecurity aspect of this book. I guess I've always thought of that as being more of a modern day challenge or something that we deal with nowadays. And so I was kind of surprised to learn that years ago. It's just that it didn't impact everyday people as it does now. It just really impacted more like governments or large business entities that had access to networks, which at the time was involving telephone wires and things. So it's a little different than we do it now, but it was still a concern. So Binary is a fun and fast-paced technical thriller that will keep you in suspense to the very end with short chapters and lots of dialogue. It is the very definition of a page-turner. I highly recommend this one to Crichton fans as well as fans of thrillers and or books on cybercrime. And while I was kind of doing some research on the book after I read it, I just found out that the book was also made into a 1972 made-for-TV movie called Pursuit, starring Martin Sheen, which was actually directed by Michael Crichton himself, which was fascinating to me because I knew that he's had some involvements with TV shows, that he created ER, and he's had involvement with some of the movies that have been made based on his books, but I did not know that he actually directed an entire film. So that was fascinating for me to learn. So yeah, I love this book. I learned a lot from it. And now I'm looking forward to see this movie as well, if I can find it. So my second title is an alternate version of a science fiction horror classic. Frozen Hell by John W. Campbell Jr. is the original version of the classic novella Who Goes There? So if you're not familiar with that title, you may be familiar with the story as it was the basis for the 1982 horror film John Carpenter's The Thing. So the novella was first published in the August 1938 issue of Astounding Science Fiction magazine. So the version that was published was not Campbell's original version, but rather a version that was revised with input from the magazine's editor, F. Orland Tremaine. So that's the version that got published, and Campbell kept a copy of the original version among his papers and manuscripts, which were eventually donated to the Houghton Library at Harvard University when they established a science fiction collection, like back in the 50s. So it was not until 2017 when author and scholar Alec Navalali was doing research on a biography that he was writing about science fiction authors, including Campbell, that he stumbled upon the original version tucked in a folder labeled Frozen Hell, which was the original title, tucked in a file at the Houghton Library, which just goes to show that you never know what awesome things are hanging out in files and folders at libraries. So Navalali was shocked to discover that this original version was there and that it actually contained 45 additional pages of content. So when he made this discovery, he reached out to Campbell's daughter, who put Navalali in contact with John Betancourt, who is an author and who actually handled the rights to Campbell's estate. And as a result of that, this alternate version, so really the original version, ended up being republished as Frozen Hell in 2019. So this original version starts out with a team of scientists stationed in Antarctica. It is extremely cold and incredibly isolated. The team's instruments detect a magnetic anomaly, which sends a handful of the scientists out to brave the elements in search of the source. They come across a large object buried under the ice. As the team works to unbury this unknown object, they come across a creature also buried in the ice. With its 3 red eyes and a head of blue tentacles, this creature is completely unknown to mankind. The team's biologist, Blair, decides the best thing to do is to take the creature back to the main station so they can unthaw it and properly evaluate it. So as the team is making their way back to the main station with this frozen creature in tow in a block of ice, the team's meteorologist, McCready, starts to have nightmares about the creature crash landing on Earth 20 million years before, having laid in the ice for all that time, barely alive and yet vaguely aware of the passing of time. His nightmare suggests that when the creature is unthawed, it will fully awaken and use its species' advanced knowledge of cell structure to consume and imitate any living thing around it. Imitate them so well, in fact, that no man or animal would know the difference. When McCready shares his nightmares with other members of the team, he is dismissed as paranoid and told flat out, that thing is dead. It's as dead as the mammoths they find frozen in Siberia. So with that, they set out with the frozen creature back to the station. They put it on a table and decide just to leave it alone and let it just thaw out on its own. But when the creature abruptly disappears from the table, who saw that coming? The team starts to suspect that McCready's nightmares were actually telepathic communications from the thing, sharing its sinister plan for world domination. Now, as the thing roams free through the Antarctic station, the team must decide who is man and who is monster as the fate of the world hangs in the balance. So I've actually read both versions of this story. I think they each have their own unique advantages. The advantage of this extended version with its additional 45 pages allows for greater character development so that we get to know more of the backstory of some of the main characters, such as McCready and Blair. So this extended version also contains a new preface by Alec Navalali and a new introduction by Robert Silverberg. It also contains, after the story, it contains a few chapters from a new sequel, which is being written by John Betancourt. So after reading those chapters, I am very excited to read the rest of the book once it is published. I don't believe it has been published yet, but fingers crossed it comes out soon. So as I mentioned, this story was, this is the basis for John Carpenter's The Thing, which is one of my all-time favorite films. I would go so far as to say it is Carpenter's magnum opus, if you will. Others may disagree. So in addition to Carpenter's 82 film, the story was also adapted into 2 other films. The first one was 1951's The Thing from Another World. And then they also did another adaptation back in 2011, also called The Thing. It was slightly forgettable. I'm glad Mandy seems to agree. I've seen all 3 versions. In my opinion, Carpenter's version is far superior among all 3. So the library actually owns The Thing 3-movie collection with all 3 film versions on one disc. So if you haven't seen them, check that out and see which version you think is the best. So I think that Frozen Hell is a must read for fans of any of the 3 movie adaptations. I also highly recommend it to fans of science fiction or horror, even if you haven't seen any of the films. Since it's a novella, it's not that long of a story, so it's not a huge investment on time, but it is a wonderfully written book that really cements Campbell's place among the science fiction giants.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That was fascinating. I was looking forward to this one because when I saw the cover, I was like, oh, Jessica's doing a horror novel. So I was so excited, and I didn't know its connection to The Thing or anything about that. So thank you so much. That was fascinating.
Absolutely.
It's one of my favorite movies as well, the 82 Carpenter version. And so I'm sold on just the sequel chapters. Like, I just have to read them now. So
yes, absolutely. Well worth the time, I think.
Thank you. So for my books this time, I chose one that's a little heavier read and then one that's a very light read. So if you want a heavier read, I've got one for you. If you just want a light, enjoyable, quick summer romance for the end of August, I've got that for you too. I'm going to start with a heavier one, which is The St. Ambrose School for Girls, which is written by Jessica Ward, who you may actually know better as J.R. Ward if you are an urban romance fantasy person. This is a completely different tone for her. So if you're used to J.R. Ward's other writings, this is very, very different. And that is why she chose to go by Jessica Ward for this book rather than J.R. Ward. But I wanted to let you know that that is who this is, just in case you're a fan and you want to check out some other things that she's done. And then I also want to comment on the marketing blurb. The marketing blurb right on the front cover says, this is a Mean Girls meets We Were Liars. And We Were Liars is a YA novel. There's also a marketing blurb out there that says that this is, what's the other one? Heathers, the movie from the 80s, meets Donna Tartt's Secret History. It's not. Like, after reading it, I was like, man, somebody should have talked to those marketers, because this is not what that book is. Because I picked it up thinking, oh, it's going to be kind of a darkly satiric thriller, because that's what Heathers is. The Secret History is a thriller set in a college. I picked it up because I thought, oh, so I'm going to get darkly satiric. It's going to be a thriller, and it's set in a boarding school, which is like catnip for me. I don't know why. I didn't go to boarding school, but for whatever reason, I'm like, it's set in a boarding school. I need to read it. So I picked it up, and it's not those things. I want to give a trigger warning. There is some really serious suicidal ideation in this book, and it deals, I felt, very realistically with mental illness. So if those are things that you cannot read and be in a safe place, this is not the book for you. This is also not that dark satiric thriller. It's a pretty hard look at somebody struggling with bipolar disorder. Her name is Sarah. She is a sophomore. She's really, really smart. She really wants to go to this boarding school for a lot of really complicated reasons, a lot having to do with her mother, who is a fascinating piece of work, even though she only appears in 2 scenes. Ward did a fabulous job creating this mother character. So Sarah's going, even though she knows this is going to be a very hard place for her, because she's going to be thrown out of her routine. She's going to be thrown out of her sleep schedule. She's not going to have her therapist there, who's kind of her support schedule. She's not going to have somebody who's making sure that she's staying on the meds that she needs to stay on. And she knows that that's an issue for her, because when she's feeling good, she feels like she doesn't need the meds and she stops taking the meds, and then things spiral. She's going to be dealing with a lot of different social pressures. And at a boarding school, there isn't an escape from that. It's not like she can go home and just leave that. It's all around her all the time. But this is also a fabulous opportunity for her to make the next step and possibly getting a scholarship to college. So she's trying it. And of course, you know, going into the novel, things are going to be hard for her, and she really struggles. And I thought the way Ward did that was thoughtful and caring, but also very realistic look at it. And the girls in the school, she finds one really good friend. Her roommate is awesome, but the other girls at the school are pretty cruel to her because she stands out as different. She's an easy target. And then Sarah starts seeing some issues with the faculty, and then someone gets hurt. And so there is a mystery aspect to it, as well as this look at what it is like to live with a mind that doesn't always work the way you wish it did, even though it also gives Sarah these fascinating insights that nobody else sees. So it's very appreciative of that neurodiversity, but it's also very realistic about the struggles that come along with having a mental illness. The characters are so well done. I thought Sarah was fully fleshed out. I thought her roommate was well done. The teachers have lives of their own. And in particular, like I said, the way her mom is done is really well done, even though she's only in a couple of scenes. So, and I will also say, I don't think the ending's a twist ending. You know, we tend to go into these reads. It's got that beautiful pink cover and you think, oh, it's going to be, you know, a psychological thriller with a twist ending. I think it's actually kind of straightforward. I think this is a book that's much more going to leave you with thinking about how things are not always clear cut about right and wrong. And there's a lot of shades of gray. Things aren't always clear cut about guilt and innocence for when bad things happen. There's some really great portraits of friendship and trust. And I just think it's a thought-provoking book. And I think it's also an empathy-provoking book. And it was not what I expected. Because I really thought, I was like, oh, I'm going to read this in a couple of days and, you know, then it's going to be forgettable. And it hasn't been. So I think it's well worth reading. If any of that interests you and you're looking for something with some depth and a mystery, and you can read it without hurting yourself in some way. So that is my hard read. So if that's something that interests you, pick up the St. Ambrose School for Girls. If you're a J.R. Ward fan and you want to see what else she can do, pick this up as well. My other book is a much lighter read. The Davenports is a young adult or a teen read by Crystal Marquise. And it's just a wonderful, fun, historical romance. And it centers on a Black family who owns a very successful carriage company. And in Marquise's author's note, she said that it is very loosely based on a real family in Chicago during the I don't have the year written down. 1910, there it is. I knew I had it down there. So it's 1910. They have a very successful carriage company, and the book centers on 4 women who are involved with the Davenport family in some way. So Olivia is the oldest daughter, and she seems all set that she is going to, you know, do what the family wants. She's going to marry this wealthy Londoner who's interested in her. And then she starts getting involved with the suffragist movement and civil rights. And maybe getting married and settling down isn't quite what she wants right now. The youngest daughter, Helen, loves the carriage company that her family has, but her deep interest is in the newly developing automobile. and she thinks that their company needs to start working with automobiles. She loves being out in the garage and seeing how things work, but her dad has zero interest in letting Helen, because she's a woman, be involved with the business. So she's kind of fighting that battle to see what she can do. Then there's Ruby, who is oldest daughter Olivia's best friend, and her family used to be wealthy, but something has happened. She's not entirely sure what, and they aren't as much anymore, but they're trying to hide it. Plus, her dad is running to be the first Black mayor of Chicago. And so that's complicating things, as well as not having the money to entirely do the election campaign the way they need to. So Ruby's out there. And then Amy Rose, who is the Davenport's maid, is thinking about striking out on her own and starting her own hair salon. But then the oldest son of the Davenports, John, starts showing some romantic interest in her, and she's not sure what she should do. Go out on your own, Amy Rose. I mean, I could tell her what to do, but the book characters never listen to me. A lot of the storylines are mostly wrapped up, but go into this one knowing that it is prepping itself to be a series. I don't know how many are going to be in there, but I was happy that not everything was left hanging, and now I have to wait for 6 months to a year for the next story. A lot of the things were given a pretty decent wrap up. So if you want a light read, you can read it in a couple days. You can get a little bit of history with your happy romance. Pick this one up. If you're thinking about giving it to a young person in your life, I would say it's probably PG-13. There's some romantic interludes, but there's nothing that's too steamy or anything. So I would say PG-13 if you're thinking about giving it to a young person. So those are my 2 reads. Thank you to Mandy and Jessica for taking your time out and sharing what you've been reading. And thank you to those who have watched or listened. And we'll see you again in September. Bye.